Hi friends, welcome to this latest episode of the Nationalist View, and today we have with us a very special guest, Nina Slama ji. Nina ji, thank you so much for taking time out from your busy schedule and joining this show. Nina ji is joining us from Israel, and she is associated with Reichman University. She's a geopolitics expert. She's also an expert on India-Israel relationship, and she appears at a number of international news channels as well as podcasts, in webinars, in seminars, and she is quoted extensively in both Israeli as well as international media. And today we are going to talk about Somaliland. Israel is the first country in the world which has recognized Somaliland. So, Nina ji, uh, what is the significance of Somaliland? What exactly is Somaliland? If you can break it down for our viewers.
Thank you so much for having me, Arun. It's always a pleasure to be here. So first of all, Somaliland is a self-declared independent state that is located in the Horn of Africa. It is in the northern part of Somalia. Back then in the years, it was under British rule until the 1960, while Somalia was under the rule of Italy. In 1960, both countries became independent, and a couple of days later, Somaliland decided to unite with Somalia and become the Republic of Somalia out of goodwill and out of an understanding that both countries should join forces in order to just introduce a united country. However, the government of Somalia marginalized, excluded, and oppressed the northern part of Somalia and different clans that were part of the northern part of Somalia for many years. And in the 80s, Somaliland just decided to gather and to introduce a national movement that will allow Somaliland to just not only reclaim its rights, but also to pursue an independent path from Somalia. So there was a civil war that erupted in Somalia in the end of the 80s. It was in 1988. And following the toppling of the government back then that oppressed very much the northern part of Somalia, Somaliland declared in 1991 its independence. There was no country that recognized Somaliland because many countries didn't want to interfere in domestic issues and to lead to a domino effect that will maybe lead some secessionist movements around Africa and other parts of the global south to destabilize this region and these regions and to just declare independence. Because we know that in Africa, there is a lot of instability for many years. And there was a fear that the declaration of Somaliland will lead many other countries in the continent to declare independence. So one can ask himself why Israel decided now to recognize Somaliland. So first of all, it is important to look at the maps and to understand that Somaliland is located in a geostrategic, geopolitical location in the map. We can see that it's located just in the in front of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the Aden Gulf, and that is a maritime route that is an important maritime route that allows many vessels from Asia, Africa, and Europe to go by the Red Sea and conduct mostly international trade among many countries. So this is one point. The other point is that Somaliland is a very stable democratic country. in a region that is not that is unstable. It is like it has borders with Djibouti, with Ethiopia, and with Somalia. And we know very well that this region suffers very much from piracy, from terrorist organizations, and other elements and actors that try to pursue their interests and influence in the region. So when we are talking about countries, it is very important to look at the maps and see what kind of a geopolitical or geostrategic location a certain country is located in. Now, another aspect is, of course, a direct implication of the two prolonged years of war that Israel was part of, a war that was imposed on Israel. And during this war that occurred or erupted following the October 7 attack, we know very well that Israel was unfortunately forced to fight in 7 different fronts, namely the Gaza Strip, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Yemen. We know that the Houthis that are a proxy of Iran and part of the axis of terror or the so-called axis of the resistance that Iran is the head of, very much disturbed not only Israel's national security by firing ballistic missiles and drones, but also the maritime routes of international trade. They attack not only Israel, but also other vessels of different countries, disturbing very much the international trade of many countries around the world. So by recognizing Somaliland, Israel, first of all, conduct a proactive foreign policy that allows it to get closer to different countries and other terrorist organizations that very much disturb and challenge its national security.
Neena ji, many analysts are looking at this recognition of Somaliland by Israel as an attempt to redraw the geopolitical map of Middle East, what we call West Asia, in this part of the world. So these are, for our viewers, these are interchangeable terms basically. The generally the Western world uses it use the term Middle East, whereas as Asians we often tend to use the word West Asia. So this is just a caveat which I wanted to share with the viewers, because I myself generally kind of interchangeably use these terms. So but is it in other words, how it is going to impact basically the ongoing redrawing of the map of Middle East?
Yes, so it is not the first time that Israel is conducting a proactive foreign policy when it is obliged to do so. We know very well that in the past and during the Cold War, Israel was surrounded by hostile Arab countries that declared war many times during the Cold War. And back then, in the late 50s, the first Israeli Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, understood that in order to address these challenges, it should introduce a new kind of strategy, which is the periphery strategy. Back then, he understood that in order to counter all the attacks and all the challenges that these Arab countries imposed on Israel, it should go outside the circle of the immediate threats that these countries imposed on Israel and to forge strategic relations with non-Arab countries that back then supported Israel and the Western world. And the countries that were part of this periphery strategy were, surprisingly, Turkey, Iran, and Ethiopia, together with other minorities in West Asia that supported Israel and wanted to just collaborate closely with the Jewish state. So it is not the first time that Israel is trying to just project its influence and its collaborations with different countries that can circle or maybe be closer and help Israel in its different challenges that it has to confront. Nowadays, we see that, of course, Turkey and Iran are not supporters of Israel. They are posing imminent threats and existential threats when it comes to Iran towards the Jewish state. They are not perceived threats. We saw that during the past 2 years, Iran fired ballistic missiles and drones towards the Jewish states, threatening time and again the Jewish states for its annihilation. So these were direct confrontations between both countries, but we know very well that Iran is also using its proxies through Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, different Shiite militias in Syria, Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen. And one way of Israel to counter these challenges is not only to confront Iran and other countries or state or not state actors directly, but to just come forward and forge good relations with countries that are located in the vicinity of hostile countries. So we saw that for many years now, Israel had good strategic relations with Azerbaijan, that is on the one hand located next to Iran, although it has good relations, that are going back in time with Turkey, that is now challenging Israel very much in different platforms. But we see that it is one way to show Iran that although there is a long distance between both countries, Israel is able to forge good relations with other countries that are geographically speaking near Iran and other hostile countries of the Jewish state. So by going forward with this strategy, this is exactly what Israel did with Somaliland. Because now that Israel is the first country to recognize Somaliland, it will be able to not only conduct kind of back channels relations when it comes to security, but publicly stating that Israel will push forward and will extend its military and economic relations with the country, and as a position in the region. So when we are talking about security measures, Israel will be able to send forces to Somaliland in order to track and see whether the Houthis in Yemen are about to come with another attack on the Jewish state. It will be easier when we talk about intelligence and maybe even establishing some bases there, military bases that will be able to just attack in time of needs, or to monitor the different activities that the Houthis in Yemen are conducting there, because the distance is very far away, and from a military perspective, it is very difficult or challenging to monitor these kinds of things. Now, we have to understand that there were many countries that condemned like the Israeli recognitions for various reasons, but there were some countries that were silent about it, namely the UAE. And when there is a country or countries that are silent about it, a specific geopolitical action, it says a lot, actually. It says a lot, because the UAE has also strategic considerations when it comes to Somaliland, and although it didn't recognize the country as an independent state, we know that they are conducting close military and economic relations. And because Yemen is, or the Houthis in Yemen are posing security challenges not only to Israel, but also to Saudi Arabia and UAE, we can see how these kind of coalitions of, countries that are in competition, constant competition, are trying to gather together, to be together or be together in order to address a certain challenge. Because today, what is important, and I think that many countries understood it today, that one country cannot deal alone with different challenges that another country or other elements are posing on a particular, on a particular state. So we know very well that we will see that different coalitions will continue to just extend their relations in a changing world. We are not talking anymore about a new world order, but about a constant changing world order. The dynamics are constantly going forward. Things that took years to evolve and just take place are really in a blink of an eye, just going on, and we see it in many parts of the regions. And today, in order to address these challenges, many countries understand that they should do it together.
So we saw a very strong reaction from especially Turkey, no, and because Turkey and Israel, so they also have kind of the tensions between the two countries have escalated, especially over the last few months. And Turkey is trying to emerge, as the new leader of the Muslim world also. Now, when Israel recognized Somaliland, a very strong reaction came from Turkey. So, how do you interpret this Turkish, strong reaction? Is this reaction of Turkey, is it driven by the fear of losing influence in Somalia, the Red Sea, and the wider Muslim world?
Yes, indeed. Turkey, for many years, tried to promote what we call the new neo-Ottoman policy. What does it mean? It means that Turkey tried to put a lot of influence and to lead the Muslim world, as you just said. And it is going beyond the West Asian region to Africa, to South Asia. And we know that Turkey is forging close relations with different countries, namely Syria. They would like to send forces to the International Stabilization Force of Gaza. They have strategic relations with Pakistan, something that posed a great challenge on India, and something that we could see during the Cinder operation, where Turkish drones and other weapons were used against India. Something that deteriorated for the past years, the relations between both countries that until then had really good relations and a lot of cultural affinities and people-to-people connections, but geopolitics, and the interest of President Erdogan to be the leader of the Muslim world in the extent of India just deteriorated the relations for the past almost decade now. And of course, the influence of Turkey in the Muslim world also we can see it in Africa. And Turkey, for the past few years, invested a lot of money and a lot of money in this region because of economic consideration, military considerations, and its willingness to be the leader of the Muslim world. Now, we can we have to understand that although Turkey is considered to be a revisionist country that would like to challenge the current world order, Iran is also part or is also considered to be a revisionist country. But we have to understand that the Muslim world has its own frictions. And when it comes to these countries, Iran is a Shiite country, while Turkey is a Sunni country that promote very much the Brotherhood ideology, the Muslim Brotherhood ideology, and both countries are just promoting these extremist Muslim ideologies that are posing an imminent threat and are threatening to destabilize many regions in the world. So, of course, there is a strong condemnation, but to these condemnations and these challenges, Israel, together with other partners, are countering them by a proactive approach. And I will just explain one or give one example. Besides Somaliland or the recognition of Somaliland, there is a new coalition of countries that is forging in the Mediterranean Sea. And we're talking about the close relations that Israel is conducting with Greece and Cyprus, something that also India is promoting to counter the challenge that Turkey is posing on it. And each and every action of a certain country, there's just led under country to react to it through different actions, whether it is through diplomatic actions or military actions. And we see that Israel, together with India and other partners in Europe, are just trying to counter these influence of the Turkish ambitions through or in just forging and extending the relations that are not confined only to military issues, but also to economic one. This is why Israel is very much willing to bring these countries together with Egypt to extend its energy power or its gas field and sources with these countries to counter the Turkish ambitions in these regions. And of course, many countries today, including India, are putting a lot of emphasis in connectivity and went through land and maritime and air routes. And when these routes are very much challenged by different elements, this is how these countries are coming together in order to look for new possibilities and new or innovative way to just continue and to make sure that these connections and this connectivity will go through. So when countries are coming together, they're not only thinking about military ways to counter a specific challenge, but especially today about innovative ways, namely diplomatic ways or maybe economic ways and political ways to just come together, signal a very strong message to hostile countries to show that these countries are not acting alone, but as a strong force of countries are just countering the challenges through a proactive approach.
So my last question, Ninaji, is, could this recognition of Somaliland by Israel, so could this move, trigger a wider geopolitical contest, especially in Africa, that involves Turkey, Arab states, Iran, and some global powers also?
So we already saw some condemnations, strong condemnations and threats coming from Iran, Turkey, and other countries. But what is important to understand is that now there are frictions and there is a kind of fear that maybe this recognition will lead to military actions or maybe destabilization of the region. But what is important to understand is that the maybe domestic elements in Iran and Turkey will not allow these countries to go into direct confrontations against Israel or other partners of Israel when it comes to to the recognition of Somaliland. we know that for the past 2 weeks, there are many demonstrations in Iran because of its political and economic crisis that the country is like going through in the recent times. And we also know that the exiled prince of Iran is like supporting the demonstrators and calling them to go out the streets and just to challenge the current government in Iran. So this is something that is very important to look for, like the domestic like challenges that the secretary country is as to address when it comes to to maybe try and understand whether or not it will go into a limited operation or a full-scale war against other countries. Because when there is unrest domestically, it is very difficult to countries to go abroad and conduct an hostile or maybe even to just go and go into a war with other countries, because the domestic situation is very much fragile. But maybe Iran will continue to just confront, Israel and other like partners of Israel through its proxies. And we know very well that the Houthis in Yemen could, launch a limited or full-scale war against Israel, Somaliland, or, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and just decide to promote Iran's interests and for now. Turkey is also, like domestically speaking, is going through some economic and political challenges, especially economic ones. And I do not believe, for now, because we're not prophets, but I do not believe that both Iran and Turkey will try to go or launch a full-scale war, following the recognition of Israel, like Israel's recognition of Somaliland. But there are other countries that we didn't mention that are also have very important stakes in Africa, namely China, for example. And we know that China has a very important presence in Djibouti, and is also watching very closely what the different developments in the region, how they are unfolding. But I am sure that China also would like to see to stabilize the region when it comes to maritime routes, because it has many stakes when it comes to international trade, and although China is also considered to be a revisionist country that would like to challenge very much the current world order, like China is a very rational, like other countries, but like a very rational actor when it comes to economic considerations. So we see that there are many elements, many countries, many considerations, many layers that we can talk about for hours, right? But we just it was important just to mention like the main ideas, domestically speaking, regionally speaking, and internationally speaking. When small, it's a small recognition of the Jewish state of Somaliland. It is a bold, like, a bold, like a political, or maybe a policy that Israel conducted because it is the first country to recognize Somaliland. But the implications of such recognition are very significant. And I believe that it's especially signaling for hostile countries that Israel will not allow state and non-state actors to continue and challenge its national security.
Thank you, Nina ji, for breaking down this complex and multidimensional issue. And this is a story which has just started unfolding, and we'll continue to track this story with Nina ji whenever she has time, and we'll keep a watch on this. And this is a very interesting story about Somaliland. We'll also be sharing some more details about the geography and the population, the demography, and a couple of other data points in the description box about Somaliland, so that you can have a better understanding about it. And we'll be back soon with another podcast. And thank you, Ninaji, once again. And thank you, viewers, for watching the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.